a lot of people ask me, does diet matter? And while this is not an active area of research within my lab, I am a firm believer that maintaining a really healthy overall metabolic state in your body is going to prevent disease by keeping a healthy immune system. So you have healthy immune cells now running around your body, and they're better able to attack any aberrant cells that might develop.
Welcome to the Perfect Day podcast. It is my honor to have here with us today Dr. Jessica Thaxton from the Medical University of South Carolina. I am so excited to have her here today. I have a newfound post with my sort of volunteerism and giving back here in the community. I've served the Medical University on either their foundation board. I'm now serving on the Hollings Cancer Advisory Board. Cancer is a near and dear topic to me. What was interesting about what we were talking about pre-interview with Jess, I love it. She's like, call me Jess. I love that. Is all things climbing, and you said, do you use a pickaxe? And we're talking about alpine climbing and how does that relate to cancer. We're going to let you know in a little bit. But I have a big initiative that I'll be launching in March of 2020 to benefit Hollings Cancer. And I wanted, you know what, first of all, I wanted you here because I hear that you are a badass mover and shaker. Sure. Literally. Those are the words from the powers that be at the MedU. Woo. Yes, and I hope that means that you are just hot on solving all things cancer and cures and immunotherapies and all these words that I can barely say. With that, I have to say that the tie between cancer and myself and the climbing and why you're here is not so much that I've had this very direct impact. I haven't had a child or, a parent, thankfully, or myself or a spouse that's been diagnosed. But for 15 years, people have asked me, Koki, why do you climb mountains? That is so dangerous. Why do you do it? And I say to them, I don't want to die on Highway 17, and I don't want to die from cancer. Right. It's fine by me. So this is one of the reasons why I climb. So how about that for a segue, Jess? What took you to cancer research? You've got a beautiful decorated resume. You've got, I'm going back to 2009, maybe earlier in terms of research. Tell us how this journey began and lead us up to today. And I don't know, are we going to talk redheaded stepchildren and T cells or something else? Because I love the concept of redheaded stepchildren. So that would be me. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So my journey with cancer immunotherapy has not been conventional whatsoever. I began after college at Amherst. I, really was, do I want to become an MD? That seemed like the pretty solid path. I knew that I was very interested in science, but I also was a little bit afraid because being a PhD researcher is a very incredibly difficult yet rewarding career. You have to fund your own lab. It's very analogous to running a small business.
And you do have your own lab.
I do. Yeah.
Thaxton Lab.
Yep.
Great.
We'll be getting a Twitter soon.
Okay, great.
And
we'll have the team bring you along on social media and see how that helps.
So what happened was I started after college kind of working in a lab just as kind of a grunt at Harvard Medical School, and then, really had a passion for research. Went with my PI, which is a principal investigator, that's the person who runs the lab, to the Garvin Center for Medical Research in Sydney, Australia. And there I kind of fueled my passion for surfing.
See, like I said, badass mover and shaker. I love it.
But I also really realized that I was very passionate about health and disease and that was really what was going to drive me, and I might be better on the research end rather than the direct patient interaction end.
Was there an aha? Did something happen in particular when
I just really loved, I don't think everyone loves reading a science paper. I don't think everyone loves figuring out how to do an experiment. And I get what someone referred to once as a science high from making small little discoveries. That has just always really been what has fueled me. This may sound ridiculous, but like maybe you have to go find a mountain when you want to become centered. You probably need to climb something based on what you're telling me your resume is. When I want to become centered, I really always go back to the lab. If I'm having,
that is hot.
Yeah, if I'm
That
having
is awesome.
any sort of personal difficulty, the way that I recenter is kind of just trolling through data and researching. I know that that's kind of weird. It's kind of my safe
it's
place.
not.
And science kind of started to be that for me. Did my doctorate at Brown. I've always been passionate about the type of science I've been working on, but I never really found something that was enough to, keep me there late nights, that kept my brain going, until I found cancer immunotherapy. And part of that has happened only in the past 5 years because the cancer immunotherapy field is so hot. It is moving so fast. There are fantastic immunotherapies and clinical trials, particularly at Hollings, that are available to cancer patients who previously would have had a very limited lifespan, but now we're seeing massively extended survival rates in all different types of metastatic patient disease with immunotherapies, and that is just a very exciting place to be. It's also a place for fantastic opportunities because we have a lot of novel immunotherapies and no one really understands why they're working, and so solving that riddle and getting really in depth on that puzzle has become an intense passion of mine, and that's kind of where I have landed at Hollings, and they supported my work through an NCIK award for the first 3 years of my lab, and so that has really kind of led to all the success that I'm starting to have and hopefully will have in the future.
So, wow, a lot to take in.
I thought I'd give you a brief overview.
A lot to take in, and I think I feel a lot like when clients come into my office and we're doing a financial debrief and I throw out all these terms and they gloss over. Because you said riddle. I'm hearing, okay, riddle us this. There's a few words. Immunotherapy. Mm-hmm. I heard metastatic and NCIK.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
I know what those are. I'm proud of me a little bit. I mean, NCI is National Cancer Institute. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the K is. What is?
So a K award is a career development award,
Okay.
and so Hollings has received through one of the really successful MDs at medical doctors at MUSC, Michael Lilly. He is the principal investigator. A lot of new terms here today.
Thank you.
On a K grant, which basically brings in scholars to the university who can develop novel therapies. And it supports them and getting their lab off the ground for the first 3 years. And so I was a recipient of that. I was the only female and the only PhD to ever receive that award thus far.
I love it. I mean, come on.
So I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, and you should be.
And that has really spurred me to think translationally with my work. And what translational research is basically creating research that is directly relevant to being applicable to patients quickly down the line. Because now the turnover rates with what we call bench to bedside, it used to take about 20 years. To get something that you found in your basic science research lab into patient care. And I think it's about 0.01% of basic research discoveries actually make it to the clinic. And now...
That's depressing.
It is depressing. And that was initially why one of the reasons that really fueled me. I started my lab with kind of a unique model. I worked directly with surgeons. And for the first year that I had my lab, we just took apart human tumors. That's all we did. Sorry. and my lab manager's over there. And so we just looked at
Why would you have to apologize to your lab manager?
Because it's a lot
about
of work to get the tumors into your lab and to take them apart.
And she supports you in that.
Well, she does the work.
Okay.
She did the work for the first year before we got other people to help.
I hope the listener is getting like the weave of all things perfect day here, because it's happening. Yeah, I know that it may feel sort of incongruent, the whole idea of, having a PhD here on the podcast today, talking about immunotherapies and cancers, but it is a business, and you're choosing unique models, and I think it's I think this was unexpected, and I'm really enjoying it. Thank you.
I've always thought that having a lab, I say this to everyone, is just like running a small business. And I think what fuels the people that are successful about it is that they find, just like you probably find passion in whatever your entrepreneurial product is. Yeah. Let's think about Shark Tank and I don't know, a particular Shark Tank product. I think the same passion has to go into your research.
What I think, though, you have and that you have on steroids is something a little different than the average entrepreneur that I encounter, whether it's in consulting or whether just in wealth management. It's unfortunate, but a lot of people, the number one driver for why they went into business was money. Like, they decided this is a great business model and this is how I can make a lot of money, because I've determined that this widget, there is this economies of scale or this diseconomies of scale that they've discovered, and and it's money driven.
Yeah.
And what you have is so different in running this lab, because it's so impactful, and that word doesn't even suit in terms of curing cancer. We're talking about curing cancer, right?
Yeah, I mean, I say this and it sounds very cliche and potentially untrue, but I think, my lab would agree with this. I would absolutely do this not for money. Don't tell my department that.
Yes. But I think that's the spice of life.
For me, it's just the derivation of, this sounds ridiculous, but it's the derivation of the scientific process. I enjoy discovering new things. And I enjoy even things that people have created a paradigm, and this is how they understand, protein translation. I enjoy, saying, no, here's the part that you didn't see. And here's the part that you didn't think about. And for me, some of the best scientists in the field are the people that can take the simplest thing and just make it incredibly powerful. And so that's kind of what I strive to do with my research group. And yeah, it definitely has a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, and that's kind of where I've gone with it, and that's what drives me.
I think I'm going to call myself a financial scientist.
Do it. Yes.
And I don't know that I have as many test subjects as you have, or as much research, in terms of the canvas of, all the people I've worked with for the last, 20 years. But
that's cool.
I feel like I test, like you said, I try to, they bring you something and you're like, I just have to go, no, I can't take that as true. I have to test it and retest it.
Exactly.
And cross-test, So no, I'm not going to take that as true. So anyway, that resonated with me. Are the stats true? Has the incidence of cancer declined 27%?
I'm not sure about that statistic.
Yeah, that's one thing that I read. I was doing a little research before you got here, and it's like, wow, it looks like cancer is down 27% over the last 25 years.
Well, I think it depends what type of cancer you're talking about. So there's many different types, obviously, of cancer. And one stat I know just off the top of my head is that I think, I want to say, spontaneous lung cancer is actually increasing in women, particularly. So there are some subgroups of the population that are becoming more affected.
Going the wrong way.
Yeah, going the wrong way. I think a lot of what has decreased the incidence of cancer would be better, prevention, better dietary choices. Also, probably a higher level of education, socioeconomic classes.
Right.
Now we're having better educational programs. And so I think in those populations, we are seeing a decline in incidence rates.
I'd like to do this. We're going to go to break real quickly. And when we come back, I do want to talk more about prevention.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Dr. Jessica Thaxton. We're making it here a perfect day, talking about finding a cure for cancer. You know, it's kind of a shame that when business owners come to me, a large portion of the time their businesses are in trouble. And it takes that sort of pain for them to step off that proverbial hamster wheel to say, I really need help now. Now is when we're in trouble. And it's a shame that I'm not able to engage with business owners earlier. That would be my wish. And, you know, I have this example that I write about in the book that, you know, none of my ideas are unique. I actually took this from Insight Solutions CEO. He likened the entrepreneur to someone riding a lion. And they're riding this lion and they're going down the street, and all these other entrepreneurs are looking at this individual on the lion and saying, oh my God, that woman's riding a lion. How cool is she? And all the while, the woman on the lion, the business owner, is saying, you know, here I am riding a lion. How the hell did I get here? And how am I going to get off without getting eaten alive? You know, but what's really happening is all the other people are looking at her saying, how cool is she and how brave is she or he? But yet the business owner on the line is going, what the hell? And how am I going to get off? And feeling like they're going to be eaten alive. So that disconnect between others' visions of who you are and what you've achieved and where you feel that you are. You know, consistently business owners say to me, oh, I want a well-oiled machine and my business is not well run. But the reality is every other business owner out there would probably regard your business as being well-oiled and really running well and great branding and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of mindset work that needs to be done in Perfect Day around just being grateful for where you are right now and recognizing that cognitive horizon of where you want to be as a business owner is always going to move. The well-oiled machine is always more oiled and always more well-run. And so that mindset of Perfect Day, of today is where we are, and being grateful for where you are and being super present in that. And while all that sounds pie in the sky, it truly is the source of joy and happiness of being a serial entrepreneur or running a business. The second piece that I'd want to address about the lion and the entrepreneur is the fear aspect. You know, most entrepreneurs are risk takers, but we all aren't always. And I think the value that I can bring from an asset management and from a financial background to my clients is one of there's time to make risks or take risks, and there's times to not take risks because you want to keep what I call your commander's intent, you know, close at hand, which is, you know, for one particular client right now, the goal is not more money and to double revenues or to increase revenues by, you know, 25% more again this year. The goal for actually a couple of my clients right now is one of, is there a recession in the looming, and what should we do right now to protect ourselves, and maybe is now not the time to take risks. So as an entrepreneur, again, being sort of less risk averse than the average bear or lion, it's nice to have a hand to hold. And I enjoy that very much in terms of saying, take the risk. Right now's the time. The sun is shining, let's make hay. Or, by the way, your vision of your perfect day, you're already living it. So why take more risks right now? So again, bringing that clarity along with sort of the fear principle back into play and sprinkling finance and capital markets over the top of it, while that's all very complex, is why I love what I do. Yeah. Welcome back to the Perfect Day podcast. I have Dr. Jessica Thaxton here with us today, and we are talking cancer and cures and Hollings and her lab, and it has been a very unexpected, for me, interweaving of Perfect Day philosophies. So I thank you so much again for being here. On break, we were talking about prevention, and this is near and dear to my heart because, I had mentioned earlier, there's been no direct and immediate impact to myself or my family with cancer, thankfully. And my big platform in wanting to raise awareness for Hollings and money for Hollings is in the prevention category. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to weave that down. I did a little research before you got here. And, there's a couple areas you can focus on. Obviously, you don't smoke cigarettes. Obviously, you do this. Obviously, you practice, there's things you can do to reduce the risk of cancer, right? Mm-hmm. Diet, I think, is a big one. And why I'd like to focus on that is when I try and bring Perfect Day to my clients into their lives, and just imagine entrepreneur X, male or female, middle-aged, kids, all of it. Imagine all the many hats they're wearing, and imagine their focus on a profitable business. Mm-hmm. And what's the first thing that goes by the wayside?
Food and exercise.
Food and exercise. Ding, 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 ding. So yes, and so that's why, this is why I know the listeners are really going to appreciate this podcast. It's very much of a different twist because while yes, you're an entrepreneur of sorts because you're running this lab, and to me, for you, that is a business. But I like to bring a framework to them of all things non-money, mm-hmm. because their focus typically was money. And that's what brought them into business for the first place. The self and the health and the core aspect of their lives is typically what falls off. So let's talk prevention, because I know that's why they're interested. I know they're interested too, because what I've found so awesome about your interview is how you're a surfer and how you've traveled and lived in Australia and how just all these different facets of your life. And that's what we're striving for in terms of Perfect Day. It's like, how do you find that balance? So let's start with prevention and health and exercise and diet, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I'm going to come at this aspect, again, from the immune system, because by training, I'm an immunologist. So we have cancer cells in our body almost every day. You have a cell that might mutate and become something that's considered to be abnormal. And what really contributes to eliminating that abnormal cell is a healthy immune system. And what drives a healthy immune system is a healthy diet. And so I'm going to go to treatment now for 1 second.
Okay.
Bear with me. Part of what I do with my research group is we figure out how to, once the tumor has already started growing, how to modulate the immune cells back to a healthy metabolic state. So now they are basically functioning better. And when they're functioning better, with a better cell type of metabolism, they can actually combat tumor growth better. And so that's once you already have established disease. But prior to that, so that really shows that if we can reestablish how the immune system is supposed to function in a healthy state, we can actually combat already established tumor growth.
And potentially not get cancer.
So in terms of the prevention phase, a lot of people ask me, does diet matter? And while this is not an active area of research within my lab, I am a firm believer that maintaining a really healthy overall metabolic state in your body is going to prevent disease by keeping a healthy immune system. So you have healthy immune cells now running around your body, and they're better able to attack any aberrant cells that might develop. And so that will come with, a very low sugar. I eat almost no sugar. And, raw fruits and vegetables, healthy meats, healthy fats, everything you normally hear, balanced with a high level of exercise.
You know what plagues us today, though, in the information age, is all the differing advice about health and exercise and dieting,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, I just went through this little phase of where I studied and read and looked into the plant paradox. Are you familiar with the plant paradox?
I'm sure. Thorough.
Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, since when is a vegetable not healthy, right?
Right.
And so, how do we wade through that? And how do you wade through it for those of us who do want to prevent and create healthy immune systems?
So my fiance actually owned a CrossFit, and so we're very into CrossFit as well. And when I met him, he and all of his friends were very paleo, like the paleo diet.
Right.
And then it's the Atkins diet. And I've never been able to follow those things. But ultimately, I really believe in the whole processed food kind of paradigm. I think if it's not natural, if it's been processed in some way, aside from Starbucks sandwiches, because I just don't have time.
Oh, good. So my children are okay.
Those are okay.
Awesome.
Cake pops are a go. Basically, I think just if you just follow that rule of if it's been heavily processed, I think cutting out potatoes is a little bit over the top. Everybody loves a good mashed potato. There's nothing wrong with that. Everything obviously in moderation. Everything in moderation, but I kind of just follow the rule of no processed foods.
And sugar is definitely
is
been
processed.
a marker.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good
So
point.
flour, sugar,
White
rice, those are all processed. And
Yeah.
so there are really easy alternatives out there to just grab. And that will basically keep your metabolism, your blood sugar kind of normalized, which ultimately boosts a healthy immune system. And you also do that by raw fruits and vegetables.
Awesome. So it's just to keep it simple.
Yeah, but I want to make a note. I'm not a dietitian, so
Yeah.
none of
Okay.
this is...
Well, we got we'll throw in the infomercial, subtext at the end. What about the exercise piece? So you mentioned CrossFit.
Well, it's probably similar to climbing mountains.
What's that?
How do you train for mountaineering?
It's very loud and annoying. I have to do it at home.
Really?
Yes.
What do you do?
Well, there's just a different type of pressure breathing you do. When you train at sea level here in Charleston, you have to train the lungs to have decreased oxygen. And either I could wear a crazy mask and walk over the bridge, which I will not do, or you can just breathe funny at home.
And do you have to do like long distance running to create a
No,
high level of
no.
endurance?
High intensity training.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
intervals.
do similar to CrossFit
yeah,
stuff.
it's very similar to CrossFit. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's pretty surprising to others that you can actually train here at sea level. Sidebar, I have a nonprofit, She Climbs, and we take women of all ages to the roof of Kilimanjaro every year.
Wow.
And do you want to know where we train? On the bridge, on the Ravenel Bridge.
Oh.
So we walk over the bridge a couple times, and for the
That's
most
fantastic.
part, that seems to be enough to get our climbers to the top.
And so you raise money for different causes through that, or?
Our goal is to sponsor a climber for each trip.
Oh, okay, cool.
And great segue to what you do and what you're doing here for the universe is the child will be sponsoring, she's not a child, she's 18, 17 or 18, that will be joining us this year on our trip. Her mother just lost, I want to say, a 13 or 14-year-old battle with breast cancer. So she passed away, unfortunately, in January of this year and left behind 17 and 20-year-old girls. And so the 17-year-old will be joining us with her two cousins going up Kilimanjaro climbing in her mom's honor. So That's who we're sponsoring this year. So yeah, that's what we do. That's what when you can have a business, whether it's a nonprofit that funds your checkbook, because She
Right.
Climbs certainly doesn't, but it's a business, just like your lab is a business. Having that passion behind it is certainly it makes getting out of bed every day
100%.
that much more easy,
Yeah.
right? Right?
That's how I feel about, since you're bringing up cancer survivorship and, people passing away. My lab has focused in the first 3 years heavily on sarcoma, and I can't really talk about this without crying, but, I told you earlier on that I work with two particular surgeons, and it was really their passion for their patient population. They work on sarcoma, which is a rare child. A lot of sarcomas are rare childhood diseases, and so we've gotten, in the first year we would get tumor samples, and it would be a 5-year-old. That really was what drove maybe the passion in the first 2 years of my lab. And a lot of those patients have passed away because there were really not a lot of accessible therapies. Conventional chemotherapy, conventional radiation really doesn't work for that small subtype, that small patient population. So finding new therapies, particularly in the sarcoma realm, was definitely intense passion in the beginning, but what that has ultimately translated to is finding some really novel ways to target immune cells that ultimately can be applied to the majority of cancer types, which is exciting.
Which is a switch from topic is more research driven, yes? It's like, for my passion of wanting to raise $1 million for Hollings is driving research, because there is no prevention for a 5-year-old with sarcoma.
Yeah, and
it's about research.
Yeah, that's great what you were saying about bringing it from the idea of prevention and diet, which you're looking at tumor types that probably affect kind of an older and aging population,
right.
As opposed to your younger patient population who really don't have a lot of treatment options, and this is not due to diet. This is just due to rare genetic mutation, and so those are not things that can really be targeted with prevention, and so that's where research comes in, and really understanding and finding novel ways to target very aggressive tumor types, even the very rare ones.
And as I understand it, Hollings is in a very unique, in your lab in particular, being located in South Carolina, is in a very unique geographic location.
For sure.
Could you talk to us about that? Because that has driven me in terms of, why didn't I choose the American Cancer Society to raise money for? Why didn't I choose Fred Hutch? I've chose, Hollings because it's here in my backyard, and I'm a native. However, I do think that the South Carolina story is an interesting one.
I'm not sure what you're hitting on, but
Okay.
I can tell you what brought me. So I had a Department of Defense, they actually fund cancer research, grant at Oregon Health Sciences University. And I was trying to recruit breast cancer survivors into my study to look at changes that had happened to their immune systems. And I was looking at a potential, I probably needed like 150 people in the study, and I was looking at a patient population of, and these weren't people that were willing to commit to my study, this was patients that were accessible to me at Oregon Health Sciences, of primarily Caucasian women, and about 52 patients per year. When I looked at the numbers at Hollings and what Hollings sees, it was over 300, and there was a huge predominance of an African American population. And this in breast cancer, there tends to be a predisposition in African American women to getting more aggressive types of breast cancer. And so that was part of what actually brought me here, was this really underserved population available to researchers such as myself at Hollings Cancer Center. And I think since I've been here over the last 4 years, they've brought in some really fantastic, established researchers who are really beginning to be able to help these underserved populations.
That's exactly what I was referring to. And then further, as I understand, and I may not be using the right terms, but just the gene pool here in the South, in terms of our African American population, makes the sample that much purer in terms of the quality of the research that comes out of the testing.
Sure.
So I think that's that to me is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad.
Yeah.
We're also a very under-resourced state in terms of cancer research. I have colleagues at Dana-Farber at Harvard who, just have all sorts of resources available to them. And sometimes, even with the support of Hollings, getting the research done you want and finding the financial resources to do that for your small business lab is difficult. And so that's why fundraising, such as what you're planning on doing for Hollings, is so powerful and important.
Well, fingers crossed for the campaign and for Everest 2020 for Hollings. I thank you so much for being here. We didn't do Spin the Book, but we're going to do it real quickly.
Okay.
And we'll see where it takes us. So, Spin the Perfect Day. Whoop! That was bad. Okay.
Redo.
So, Spin the Perfect Day book. Let's see where we land. And I'm hoping I can give you a little something you can take away with today. And thanks for your time.
Just open to any page.
Yeah, any page you want.
Ooh, good one. Changing the activity mindset.
Changing the activity mindset. All right. Well, it seems to me that your activity mindset's probably very well placed. When I hear about all the research you do and how you're so science-centered and yet you surf, and your diet and exercise is very well rooted in what you do. So I think you probably have an A++ in the activity mindset. Are there activities at work daily in the lab that you're just like, I don't want to do? You put off, you procrastinate.
But I give them to other people to do.
Then you wrote the chapter. You also wrote the chapter on delegation. So, way to do it. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us here with Perfect Day Podcast and Dr. Jessica Thaxton at the Medical University of South Carolina. Sending you all ideas of cancer prevention and awareness, and hoping that we can bring ourselves and many others more perfect days without cancer. Thanks for joining us.